If you're a business owner who's still using high interest credit cards or their personal savings to fund or scale their business, stick around because I'm about to show you what nobody else will. Because banks are giving away practically free money. No, it's not actually free, but banks are giving away up to $250,000 all at 0% interest using business credit cards. Now, I'm about to show you guys my exact personal sequence, data points, and other tricks, which is going to allow you to be able to secure the same amount of funding if you have a 700 plus credit score. Yes, if you have a 680, you can be approved, but you might not get the whole $250,000 or anywhere close to that. So typically it is 700 plus. So we're going to jump into the exact sequence, data points, and what banks look for when qualifying clients for business funding. So jumping straight into it, what is on today's agenda and who am I, right? My name is Hunter Tobin. I've been doing this since I was 18. I needed to figure out how to get capital as a broke 18-year-old who ran an Amazon FBA business. And if you guys know anything about Amazon FBA, it's a very capital intensive business, right? You need to spend money to make money, and only buying $2,000 a month in inventory was not going to make me rich, right? And obviously that is the end goal as a business owner. So today's agenda, I'm going to show you guys my exact $250,000 sequence plus data points. Let me make this smaller so you guys can see. And then this is, the best opportunity for business owners that nobody talks about, right? If you're a business owner, there is a 80-90% chance you've probably never heard of 0% APR capital with high limits, right? Maybe you've seen personal credit card offers, but banks like Chase are giving away 50 to 100K lines all at 0% APR. Right now, we're also going to be doing a quick Q&A at the end of the video from people in my Telegram. If you're not already, go ahead and join. I'll throw the link down below in the description. Also, here's my Twitter or X. If you don't follow me there, go ahead and follow me. I drop a bunch of raw content on there, sequencing, credit repair, a bunch of stuff like that. This is my Instagram. I don't post too much there, but I'm going to start posting a lot more. All right. So these are, these are some of my clients that we've been able to get funded in the last 3 months. We've rebranded recently. We don't go by Maxiva anymore, ChatGPT ass name. But here's some results. This client on the left, we secured him $73,000 at 3 different banks, $45,000 on one card, 16 on the other, 12 on the other, and then we did another round and got him, 73K. So, sorry, I'm going to do no cuts in this video, by the way. We're going straight raw dogging it, and we're going to do no cuts because we do this shit for real. So, this client right here, we were able to get him $143,000. This took about a month, and I think it was around 7 banks, if I'm not mistaken. So anywhere from like 6 to 7 banks. This client, able to get him $115K at 3 banks. This client over here, we got him $45,000 at 2 different banks. So here are some more clients we were able to get funded. Over here, we got Dylan a $114,000 0% APR card with Chase. This client right here, we were able to get him 100K. It was 40K on the first card, 60K on the second, just at Chase. Ozma, we were able to get my guy $100,000 as well, 60K on one and 40K on the other. And then Gamard, we got him $90,000 on one card, which was pretty insane because he had a brand new LLC. He did have monthly revenue, which typically you don't need, but we submitted it, and that's how we were able to get him $90,000. So, who is this for? This is for business owners who need capital fast, right? If you're a business owner and you're still using personal savings or high interest credit cards, one, it's probably not enough to scale you to, 6-figure months or wherever you want to be. It's just not enough, right? And personal savings, you always want to have some type of safety net or extra capital, right? Maybe you don't have a lot of personal savings. Using the bank's money is never a bad idea. It's a lot more safe. Obviously, if you default, it's not the end of the world, but it's better than burning all of your personal cash and, risking it that way, right? Why not risk the bank's money instead of risking your own? That's what I always think. So now you do need a 700 plus credit score. That is super important. These banks are going through your credit profile. The underwriter is looking at stuff like utilization and a few other things we're going to go through on the next slide to see if you're even eligible to secure, a $50,000 credit card. Because let's be honest, if you are Chase Bank, you're not going to give $50,000 to someone with a 500 score. Just being honest, right? Now, this could also be for a regular person who wants to travel a lot and run up a shitload of credit card points by using 0% APR cards and other cards like, Amex, Chase, and, Capital One, right? Those are probably the top 3 when it comes to building bank relationships and points. Now, as I said again, personal credit is the key to everything, right? These banks are looking at if you're a lendable client. If you have a 500 score, it's not the end of the world, right? Credit repair is easier than you think. Yes, it may take a lot of time, but if you're able to get up into, 690 to 700 plus, then you have a great chance of approval. Obviously, there are a lot of details that go into it, but typically 700 and above, we're able to get at least 50K in funding. Once you hit 750, 790, 800, like, where my score is sitting and some of my clients, yes, you're going to be able to get $250,000 on one LLC. So now, data points. Let me go ahead and move this. So number one, like I said, 700 plus FICO score. FICO is always going to be the most accurate credit score. If you guys didn't know, it goes FICO, which is Experian, and then Vantage Score, which is TransUnion and Equifax. Those scores tend to be a bit higher. So if you're sitting about like a 670, 680 with your Experian score, most likely you're probably a little bit closer to that 700 mark with TransUnion and Equifax. So I always recommend going off FICO score. Once again, it does depend what bank you are working with because they pull different bureaus, right? For example, Chase pulls Experian and TransUnion, but let's say you went to Wells Fargo, they only pull TransUnion. Now, let's say you went to Truist, they only pull Equifax, right? So we really have this shit down to a science, and we're not just doing, random applications praying one bureau is clean, right? Like, let's say you have an unclean Experian, you have some collections on Experian, but it's not reporting to TransUnion and Equifax. You can run banks that don't use Experian, right? A lot of banks only do TransUnion and Equifax, they'll soft pull EQ. And yeah, so it really just depends how your credit profile looks, which is super important. Now, hard inquiries. If you have hard inquiries that are related to an open account, sadly, you cannot remove those. But the good thing about business credit cards, let's say you ran an application for the Chase Business Inc. They're going to pull your Experian and your TransUnion. So you're going to get a hard inquiry on those too. But since it's a business card, you can have your personal profile whatsoever, meaning you can call Experian, you can look up a 24-hour Experian removal, follow the steps. I'll probably drop one later. Sorry, I'm kind of yapping. But you can get those removed since they're not viewing on your personal profile. But let's say you got a Chase personal card like the Chase Sapphire Preferred. You got a hard inquiry. If you were to remove that, you're risking getting the account closed, right? Because they verify the records. If it's on your personal profile, they're going to call the creditor, and now you're risking the account being closed. And nobody likes that. That's going to ruin your Chase relationship. So now, clean history. This is also super, super, super important, right? No negatives, no collections, no charge-offs, no late payments, all within 2 years. Now, the good thing about it, even if they're 2 years old, I would still recommend removing it because that could be between a $10,000 to $15,000 difference in your approval limits, sometimes even more. We have had clients with late payments that are about 3 years old. They were about 2 years old, and we still were able to get them funded. But no, we did try to remove them prior, but they just kept coming back. Sometimes that does happen with credit repair, so just be wary of that. Now, low utilization. Typically, we like to see 15% and under on each card and 30% total across your whole profile. So, yes, let's say you did have a 50% utilization rate. There are a few ways to go around it. What you can do is get an authorized user or a trade line as we call it. Throw that on your personal profile, like let's say a 10 to 20K limit. That's going to decrease your utilization rate because your limit is going up. Now, they are pretty expensive. They can range from anywhere from $250 all the way to $500 a month, just depending on, how high is the limit, how high is the age, and, a few other factors like, who you're getting them from. I recommend Tradeline Genie. There are some probably better ones out there, right? Now, next, established limits. When you're going to apply at these banks, they're looking at how are your personal limits. If you have 2 cards only, and you have, let's say, for example, 2 Capital One cards, but both the limits are $500, you're going to get laughed out of the room. Like, I'm just being honest. I like to keep it very blunt with you guys. You're not going to be able to get an approval. So, in personal limits, whether that be $2,500 on 2 cards or $5K on 1, you're going to have a lot better of approval odds and also getting a higher limit. We've had some clients get approved, with 1K total limits, but it's a 3 to 5K approval. It's really just not even, worth wasting the year of 0% APR unless you can spend on the card a lot every month and get that limit increased. So, business age. Typically, these banks are looking at 1.5 year and above. I just like to kind of cut it at 2 years just to make sure we're not going to run into any problems. But let's say you are a brand new LLC. You started your business last night, you have good credit, but you want to fund your business fast, right? You don't have time to be aging the LLCs. That's when shelf corps come in. If you need an aged shelf corp, they can range from anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. I've seen even cheaper, just depends where you're getting that. Now, finding a supplier for these is really, really hard. It took us months on end to find ours, and we're paying about $1,500 for each Montana Shelf Corp. But they're about all 6 to 7 years old. So, that's great, right? That's going to be the difference between an approval, and a denial. Now, let's jump into the next slide. Banking relationships. Now, depending on what bank, banking relationships matter a lot, okay? For example, let's say you are taking a girl out on a date, right? Are you going to try to, bring her home the first night? No, probably not. And it's the same thing with most banks, right? You need to have some type of, data points within their ecosystem, and you need to be in their footprint, right? You can't just show up to the bank, and try to take it home on the first date. Realistically, that's just never how it works unless, you're really like that. But in the banking case, that's not how it works. So, sorry for the unprofessionalism. I'm only 20 years old. So, I like to make references like this. But anyway, I don't give a shit. It's just the truth. You need banking relationships. You can't just show up to Chase Bank, ask for a $50K line with no deposit history, no personal cards with them. It's just not the case, right? Usually, typically, it's going to be, within 30 to 60 days of building with the bank. But there are some banks that will let you take them home on the first night and get an approval. So you just have to figure out what banks do that and which don't. So typically, what I will say, Chase, they let you take them home very quickly. But when you get to a bank like Bank of America, typically it takes anywhere from 30 to 60 days of aging that relationship to be able to get an approval. Now, let's get into my exact custom sequence that I used for myself and now I am using for a lot of my clients. Now, there are many ways you can structure a sequence, but this is by far the best personal beginning sequence you can run, ever, right? It really depends on the profile at the end of the day, but typically if you're above a 700, you hit all of the last criterias on the data points. Typically, this is probably the best custom sequence I could guarantee, at least a few approvals. So now jumping straight into it, the first one I would go with is the Chase Business Cash. Sorry, holy shit, I am on one today. But yeah, the Chase Business Cash, right? You're going to get anywhere from 20 to 50K as long as you meet all of the prior requirements, right? 2-year-old LLC, 700 plus score, your utilization is below 30% total, 15% card, right? You got the LLC age, and you're meeting all of those criteria, anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, and maybe even higher if you have a relationship banker, right? My company, we do have one. We use this for all of our clients, and we've seen an increase for about 15 to 20% of limits when using a relationship banker. Okay, the next one. American Express has 2 0% APR business cards, right? They have one personal, the personal blue business cards, the blue business cash, and the blue business plus. So these cards, you're going to see anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 per limit, and you can run 2 applications, right? The good thing about Amex, once you're in their footprint, once you have an Amex card, they only give you one hard inquiry. So let's say you get this Chase Business Cash, okay, you get 20 to 50K, you wipe the hard inquiry with the 24-hour removal hack. The next day, you come to Chase, you apply for the Blue Business Plus, you wipe that inquiry. Next day, as soon as those are gone, you go for the Blue Business Cash. Sorry if I mixed that up, but yeah, you get one and then you get the other. Typically, you're probably going to see 5K on each or 25K on each, 20K on each, 15K on each, right? Typically, they're always going to be the same limits across the 2 cards. But what a lot of people don't mention, you can actually get the personal first, take that limit, and then put that on the business cards, right? So that's kind of what I would recommend. Let's say you don't want to get any personal cards, you don't want another personal card on your limit, skip it, just go straight for the BBP and the BBC. Pause. Anyway, next we have the US Bank Business Platinum. This card you're typically going to see anywhere from a $3,000 to $25,000 limit. Most of the time, if your credit profile isn't super stacked, it's going to be on the lower end, anywhere from 3 to 10K. But typically with our clients, we're seeing anywhere from about 10 to 15. I have only had a handful of people have 3K. But I would also recommend building with this bank, right? US Bank is a little more relationship based, and if you have a relationship banker at the bank, you're going to get a lot higher of an approval. So now they have a second card, the Business Triple Cash. It's kind of going to be the same limit. Let's say you got 15K on the first one. It's probably a 90% chance you're going to get 15K on the second one. Same thing if it were 3K. If you got 3K on the first and you go for the second application, as soon as you wipe the inquiry, you're going to get the same limit. If you were to higher chance of getting a higher limit, just depending on what your spend looks like on this bottom card. All right. So next after that, we have the PNC Bank card. This is their only, business credit card that has 0% on it, and it's going to be 9 months instead of 12, right? These as well. Actually, no, these ones are 12 months. This one is 12 months. This one is 12 months. These two are 9 months. So with the PNC Bank card, going to see anywhere from 5 to 15K. I have seen one approval at 20K, but that's the highest I've heard of so far. And they are, very relationship based as well. So I would always recommend opening a business checking for each of these banks besides Amex. I still don't have one with them, but they do have a good sign-up bonus. So always open a business checking and get at least 1K in deposits in all of these banks before going for any type of business credit card, because like I said earlier, you always have to take them. Oh, wow, that's bright. You always have to take them home. You have to, sweet talk them before you take them home, right? So now after that, we have the Wells Fargo Signify Business Cash. Typically, you're going to see anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 on this business credit card. So they don't give the craziest limits like Chase. You're always going to get the highest limits at Chase. But when you're stacking all of these together and you're maximizing your limits, you're wiping inquiries, you're cleaning up your profile as you go, that's how you're going to secure the highest limits, right? With just this sequence alone, you can secure up to $150,000, right? Sometimes maybe more, sometimes maybe just between 50 and 75. But the more structured your profile is, let's say you have relationship bankers in the mix, let's say your LLC is 6 years old, and you're meeting the highest criterias, you're going to secure, upwards of 200K, right? Now, there is a lot more 0% APR cards out there. These are not the only ones. I would say there's probably about 15 to 20 more cards that we use total in, our sequences. But this is a great place to start. This is for beginners. This is for people just trying to take a, leap of faith into using 0% APR cards instead of having to use a high personal cash limit. I don't even know what the fuck I'm saying. Pause. But this is how you're going to use. Now, this is for people jumping into the 0% APR, loophole, right? Let's say, this isn't the most advanced sequence, but if you're just jumping into it, this is the main beginner sequence I would recommend that we still use to this day, right? This isn't outdated information like a lot of these credit and finance gurus are giving. This is like pure sauce, right? These are all cards I have. Here's the Business Unlimited. Here's the Business Cash. Hopefully I didn't just leak my whole number. But yeah, I don't know where my blue cards are. I only have them on Apple Pay. But yeah, you see the point, right? Like these are cards I use every day. So these are some of the questions from my Telegram, and I'm going to kind of jump into these real quick. And that's going to be the end of the video. I know we're already at 20 minutes. Didn't mean to take up too much time, but let's go over this quickly. So can you more in depth? Okay, this guy just doesn't know English. Can you go more in depth on gray hat methods like aged LLCs, purchase trade lines, and revenue projections when applying for business cards? I wouldn't say any of this is even gray hat, to be honest. There's a lot of places you can get an aged LLC. I wouldn't call that gray hat at all. Purchasing trade lines, I also really wouldn't call that gray hat. I mean, maybe a little bit, just because technically, I wouldn't even call that gray hat at all. Revenue projections, when applying for business cards, that's a good one. So when I apply for business cards, we have select data points at each bank. So I'll give you one handout. For example, for Chase Bank, typically when we're doing like personal income, we typically stay around from 120 to 125, per year, $125,000 per year for personal income, and then business income. If you're doing it with a relationship manager, you can go anywhere from 1.1 to 1.3 mil. Let's say you're doing it no relationship manager, you're doing an online app, or you go into the branch and they do an online app there. Typically, I would say anywhere from $700,000 to $800,000 in business revenue. Now, they do not, state its projected revenue, but nobody's telling you you cannot put your projected revenue for the year. Gotcha. So yeah, that's the best way I could answer that. Can you get a credit line and just put everything in the S&P 500. In theory, right? Let's say you got a 50K line on the Chase 0% APR card at 0% interest, right? So you have 1 year to, hopefully make 8%, right? But, I just wouldn't recommend doing that. You would have to liquidate the credit card, and right away liquidating it, typically you're going to see a 3% fee using like Melio and Plastique. But yeah, I mean, in theory you could. Is that the smartest option? Probably not. I mean, unless you plan on fleeing the country and, never using the bank again if you don't pay it back. No, but I would just not do that. Fucking A. How do you created a business with large ad spend to trigger ad multiplier on Chase Sapphire Reserve business, for example? Dude, I can just tell this guy's from like a third world country. Like, I have no idea how to answer that. How do you create a business with a large ad spend? I mean, dude, like, you can start any business you want. Like, let's say you're starting like a lawn mowing company, right? If you're running ads, you're going to get 3x back. I believe it's even 4x back actually on Chase Sapphire Reserve business card, which is a solid multiplier, and it's better than the Amex Golds because Amex Golds only let you spend $150,000 and get that 4x back. But with the Chase Sapphire Reserve business, the new card that just dropped a couple months ago, it's unlimited, right? So I would definitely put that in a higher tier card rather than using an Amex Gold. But the thing about Amex Gold, you can get as many of them as you want. So you can realistically have like 10 Amex Golds open under the same LLC. So if credit score is shit only due to utilization, what can be done to improve on that, or are you just fucked? Like I said earlier in the video, let's say, if it's maxed out at 100%, realistically, dude, you just got to pay it off. But let's say you're at like 50 to 60% and you want to get down to like the 30 to 40% range, which yes, it's typically a little too high. But you can still get solid approvals, right? As long as you're doing it right, as long as you have the data points, relationship managers, and everything else besides utilization is good. Throw 2 trade lines on there, right? Throw a 20K, throw a 10K for the age, and then hopefully get down to anywhere from like 20 to 40%, and that's going to be a lot better than sitting at 70 to 80, right? So trade lines. How to build your business credit profile? What types of credit to go to after? So business credit is a lot different from personal credit, right? I would say you need business credit when you're getting, like non-PG and something that doesn't use your personal credit. So I would build it using Granger and Uline. There's a few other ones you can do. Honestly, just put this question into ChatGPT. I'm not the I'm not the greatest at building business credit profiles, but it's typically not hard, right? There's ways to build your relationship with Duns, and then, using Uline and Granger to build kind of your 30-day net terms, using, Amazon FBA, right? Building business credit with the suppliers, doing net 30s, and, I have a very, very solid Duns. So, honestly, I would focus on personal credit. That's going to take you a lot further until you're doing, millions a month in revenue, and you need some, $500,000, $1 million loans. So, typically, personal credit's always going to be the bottom step. Now, can you get the Chase 524 rule? Do business count towards the rule? Also, can removing inquiries have negative effects like being harder to verify, for example? So, removing inquiries is typically safe as long as you're not removing it from a open account on the personal side, right? If you have a business card, 90% of the time, unless it's Capital One, is never going to show up on the personal side. So what you can do is remove that inquiry because they cannot verify that inquiry came from a card because they can't see your business cards. They can only see what is on your personal profile, meaning you can go ahead and remove that inquiry. The Chase 524 rule, business cards, yes, they do count for that rule, but let's say you are 524'd, using a relationship manager from Chase is going to get you past that 524 rule. So even if you're, you got a bunch of personal credit cards or, business cards, actually do business cards. If it's a business card with Chase, yes. If not, no, because they can't see it. So, let me just clarify there. If it's a Chase business credit card, they can see in their internal system that you applied for a business credit card and got approved, and that's going to count against your 524. But once again, relationship manager, if you're doing the DocuSign app with them, they just waive it. So, that was the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I try to drop as much sauce as possible. I'll also be making future credit repair and more business funding in-depth videos in the future, and even diving into stuff like, how international guys can do it. But typically, this is for US only. I forgot to clarify that, but this exact method is for US only. The international business method takes a lot longer. Typically, yes, we do use the same cards, but we need to build personal first. So, if you are a business owner with a 700 plus score and you need this exact strategy and you need access to $150,000 to $250,000 all at 0% interest implemented into your business, I'm going to drop a link below for you to book a call with either me or my team, and we can assess your current profile and give you an accurate estimate of how much capital we can secure your business. Now, let's say you don't have a 700 plus score, but you are still interested in this, or you just have a low score because of late payments, collections, charge-offs, a Chapter 7, whatever it may be, we offer credit repair as well. So I'll drop both links below as well as my free Telegram. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in there and talking to a bunch of you. Now, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next one.